Hello guys, welcome back to BEC Preliminary course. How are you doing? So in the last unit, we talked about company performance and the skills to present the financial performance of your companies. Now, when we talk about company performance, we're talking about some sort of results that are decided by past experiences. In other words, there is virtually nothing you could do to change it when you are presenting the financial report. But what we're going to talk about today is something different. So in this unit, we're going to talk about trends. Now, we study trends when we want to know the way that things are moving. For example, if prices will increase or decrease. And we often look at past and present trends to make predictions about things that we think will happen in the future. So in this sense, what we're going to talk about today is much worth to study. Now, speaking of trends and predictions, I guess nothing beats the complications that are with the world of technology. And we are living with technology every day, like the mobile phones we're using every day. Now, mobile phones have become a crucial part of our daily life nowadays. Everyone, from teenagers to old men, has a personal cell phone of their own, right? But the mobile phones we see now didn't look like this earlier. Instead, they were something totally different, something you wouldn't even think of having around you or using. So here, let me ask you this question. How have mobile phones changed over the years? Great job. 那么近10多年技术的创新呢，给手机产业带来了革命性的变化。我们现在每天用的手机呢，经历了从最初的砖块演变成了今天的轻巧的智能手机。那么这期间发生了什么样的变化呢？ Now here, let's quickly go over some slides and review the evolution that has happened in the mobile phone industry. First of all, let's take a look at this mobile phone. So guys, does this look familiar to you? Well, actually, in 1995, mobile phones used to look like this. As you can see on the picture, it's very huge in size. And also, it has a pretty long antenna. And I guess it's quite similar to today's cordless phone, 无绳电话好，我们现在看这一款手机会觉得造型非常的奇怪。But back then, back in 1995, this cell phone was the craze of the day. Now here, let's move on to the next slide. So this one is a Nokia 9000 in 1996. So compared with the cell phone in 1995, how has this one changed, guys? Great. So in 1996, mobile phones become a little more defined and better looking than how they were before. As you can see on the picture, the antennas were shortened and the designs modified. 同时，从设计上来说呢，这款手机也升级了。And this Nokia 9000 was one of the most popular phones of that time. Now let's move on to the next one. The picture shows Nokia 3210 in 1999, and as you may have noticed, this Nokia 3210 features cool colors, internal antenna, and better graphics in a much smaller package. And as far as I can remember, some of my relatives back home are still using this kind of phone. Now here, let's take a look at this one. Actually, this is the world's first touchscreen phone. And this is a Motorola phone in 2000. And in 2002, technology made another huge change in the history of mobile phones. And as you can see from the picture, the display color is much more colorful. And also, there is a built-in camera. Now, turning to 2003, the mobile phones are no longer limited to a single screen. And as you can see from the picture, there is a dual screen. Now, coming to 2007, Apple Incorporated unveiled the Apple iPhone, which was the world's first advanced touchscreen smartphone. And as you may know, it is the first phone to have an operating system, the iOS, and it enables different kinds of apps to run on the phone. Okay, that's all for the phone in 2007. And for the rest of the story, so the phone from 2008 till now, I'm sure you know it better than me. So after reviewing these slides, I'd like to ask you these questions. Say, when did you buy your first mobile phone? How long have you had your current mobile phone? How many times do you use your mobile phone each day? Do you use your phone to send text messages or take photographs? Okay, great job. 好，现在的手机已经走进了千家万户，但是大家可能想不到，在几年前，手机刚刚在中国流行的时候，并不是所有的人都能够支付得起的。但是呢，手机确实能够使我们的沟通，不管是日常上的沟通，还是工作上的沟通，变得更加的快捷有效。那这也就是为什么在几年前很多公司是需要下一定的决心去为公司的部分员工配备手机。那么待会儿我们会听到的这个 presentation 呢，就是跟我刚刚所说到的那个时代的特点有关的。So here we're about to listen to a company's buying manager giving a presentation about mobile phone use. And here below you can see 3 slides that the presenter used. And I'm sure after the last unit, you were quite familiar with these types of slides. So here, let's listen to the presentation and write a number in the boxes to show which order the buying manager speaks about them. Ready? Here we go.
Okay, everyone, thanks for coming. As you know, we are currently deciding what sort of mobile communications equipment our staff will need in the next few years. Let's start by looking at what we have used in the past, because this will help us to decide what we'll need in the future. This graph shows the history of mobile phone use in the company. 10 years ago, we decided to give our sales representatives mobile phones. And this let reps contact the sales office with orders and to check stock and prices before they did a deal. And the next year, we also gave them to senior managers. 2 years later, all managers got company mobile phones so that people could contact them easily if they had to make a decision. And 3 years after that, when the price of mobile phones came down, we gave them to technicians. You can see the mobile phone use by job in this bar chart. So today, all those groups in our company have a mobile phone from the company. In fact, a total of 24% of staff have a company mobile phone, as you can see in the pie chart. Now, we have to decide if some of those employees will need a more up-to-date piece of equipment in the future. For example, a smartphone, a palm top, or a wireless handheld device. Now, if you look at this table here.
Okay, now let's check your answers. So apparently the presenter first spoke about the line graph, and then she moved on to the bar chart, and lastly the pie chart. And after listening to this presentation for the first time, we have got the idea that the presenter has done a great job in presenting her ideas. The speech is very well organized, and the presenter has done a great job in interacting with her visual aids. But how did she do it? Now let's take a review. First of all, let's take a look at how she opened her presentation. Let's take a look.
Okay, everyone, thanks for coming. As you know, we are currently deciding what sort of mobile communications equipment our staff will need in the next few years. Let's start by looking at what we have used in the past, because this will help us to decide what we'll need in the future.
OK， 好，我们在前面讲 presentation skills 的时候呢，提到了听众在进入这个会场之前呢，其实带着各自的疑问进来的，并不是所有的人都知道你是谁，也不知道你为什么要做这个演讲，也不知道他们要听什么，同时呢，也不知道你会怎么展开你的演讲。那么如果你没有在演讲的开头呢，就把听众的这些疑问给解答的话，那么听众呢可能很快就会失去对你演讲的兴趣。所以我们在之前的 presentation class 当中呢，是让大家一上来先做这4件事情 ：say introduce yourself, tell your audience your destination, and outline the roadmap, and lastly put yourself into your audience's shoes. 那么我们再来看一下这个 speaker 他是怎么做的呢 ？Okay, everyone, thanks for coming. As you know, we are currently deciding what sort of mobile communications equipment our staff will need in the next few years. Let's start by blah blah blah. 好，首先第一点，他没有做自我介绍。其次呢，他也没有花时间去跟听众交代为什么今天要选择这样一个主题来跟大家分享。这是为什么呢？很显然哈，这个 speaker 应该是给他们内部的员工做这样的一个分享。那既然是给公司内部的员工分享，那么这些听众应该来说对整个事情的来龙去脉是再熟悉不过的，包括说这个 speaker 他是谁，是哪个部门，他的 title 是什么其次呢，他们今天来这里的目的是什么，那这些信息呢都是他们已知的，不需要这个 speaker 再重复了。那么这个 speaker 呢，其实他也知道听众对这些背景都知道，所以他很快就切入了主题。As you know, we are currently deciding what sort of mobile communications equipment our staff will need in the next few years. 好，一句话哈，就把这个背景概述一下。那么说完这个 what 之后呢，再来说 how。那么 how 这个部分呢，是听众来参加这个演讲之前不知道的。演讲者要如何展开你的演讲，其实听众是不知道的。那这一点呢，只有演讲者自己知道。那么因此speaker 马上就把这个 how 的问题解决了。Let's start by looking at what we have used in the past, because this will help us to decide what we'll need in the future. 好，我们先来回顾一下我们过去的一些做法，因为这样呢可以帮助我们确定我们将来的一些需求。好，通过这样一句话呢，就把它接下来要提到的3个 slides 3张幻灯片给引出来了。Now here, let's listen to the next part of the presentation and answer the following questions. First, which people in the company received mobile phones first? Second, how long ago did that happen? Third, how many years later did all managers receive mobiles? And the last one, which people in the company received mobile phones last? Ready? Here we go.
This graph shows the history of mobile phone use in the company. 10 years ago, we decided to give our sales representatives mobile phones, and this let reps contact the sales office with orders and to check stock and prices before they did a deal. And the next year, we also gave them to senior managers. 2 years later, all managers got company mobile phones so that people could contact them easily if they had to make a decision. And 3 years after that, when the price of mobile phones came down, we gave them to technicians.
Now here, let's read the script for this part and check your answers. And while you are reading, please pay attention to the words in color. Great job. So the first sentence, this graph shows the history of mobile phone use in the company. 好，这个 speaker 呢，在前面开篇已经讲到了，我们要知道我们公司下一步的具体需求是什么的话，那么我们回顾一下我们之前的一些做法是有帮助的。而这里呢，他就开始回顾之前的做法了。 那么首先呢，它的幻灯片是跳转到了第一章这个 line graph。那么 line graph 出现之后呢，它简明扼要的向听众交代了这个 line graph 到底展现的是什么东西 ，the history of mobile phone use in the company。那么接下来呢，它并不是把这个 line graph 上面的所有信息都跟听众交代了一遍哈，因为听众其实自己也是有这个理解能力的。那么这个 speaker 他做的呢，就是引导听众看哪些重要的信息，而下面他说的这些重要的时间节点所带出来的就是一些重要的信息了。比如说 10 years ago 发生了什么 ，next year, 2 years later, 3 years after that。OK， 那么这些信息呢是关键的信息，是你作为一个演讲者需要引导你的听众去注意到的信息哈。Now here, let's take a look at some words in this part. So first of all, let's take a look at a job title, sales rep. As we've mentioned in the past, rep is short for representative. So here, sales rep is short for sales representative. And also, I'd like you to take a look at the word stock. So stock here means 库存. Say here, this led to reps contact the sales office with orders and to check stock and prices before they did a deal. Stock, 库存. And lastly, do a deal. Do a deal here means to conclude a transaction. Okay, so much for the language points in this part. Now here, let's take a look at the line graph one more time. First of all, let's take a look at the title of this slide. Increase the number of staff with mobile phones. 好，横轴上面的呢标明的是年份 ，OK， 那么纵轴上面标明的是 number of staff。那么这些信息呢是作为一个听众来说一眼就可以捕捉到的显而易见的信息，是不需要这个 speaker 再大费周章的去说，哎，我下面要讲什么什么什么啊，横轴是什么，纵轴是什么，不用你说了，听众都已经知道了。那么听众还可以看到什么呢？对了，听众还可以看到这个图片上红色的折线哈，但是听众不能够直接捕捉到的信息呢是这条折线上的点有那么多，到底哪些时间点是重要的？那么这些时间点它到底有什么样的含义？而这些呢就恰恰是这个 speaker 要指出的。好，我们刚刚在分析这一段文本的时候呢，其实已经把这些点给拎出来了。But now let's listen to this part one more time. And in this time, I'd like you to point out the important dots on this line. Ready? Here we go.
This graph shows the history of mobile phone use in the company. 10 years ago, we decided to give our sales representatives mobile phones, and this let reps contact the sales office with orders and to check stock and prices before they did a deal. And the next year, we also gave them to senior managers. 2 years later, all managers got company mobile phones so that people could contact them easily if they had to make a decision. And 3 years after that, when the price of mobile phones came down, we gave them to technicians.
Okay, so much for this part. And we should say the speaker has shown us a very good example of how to interact with our visual aids. And here I'd like to introduce to you a very important principle in interacting with visual aids, which is called TTT principle. So TTT is short for touch, turn, and talk. And touch means indicate what is relevant on the slide. 你在给听众展示幻灯片的同时呢，也要简明扼要的点明为什么要给大家展示这张幻灯片，这张幻灯片上面所显示的信息跟今天的主题有什么样的关系。And after saying that, you turn back to the audience. 这里呢，大家注意自己的体位变化哈。那么在前一步做 touch 的时候，你在解释，哎，这张幻灯片到底跟今天主题有什么关系的时候呢，很有可能你就是对着 ，OK， 面向着幻灯片。那么说明完了之后呢，你需要再转过身来，面向你的听众，跟听众做演讲。And the last step, talk to the audience and not to the screen or wall. 那这一点说的呢，就是我刚刚所提到的体位的变化。Now here, let's take a look at an example. First of all, do you think the way the speaker stands is good or bad? Well, actually, you need to try to avoid this, because when you are standing like this, you are competing with your visual. 好，大家注意观察一下，这张图片当中的投影仪呢是放在了舞台的正中央，而这个 speaker 呢是被挤到了旁边这个角落里面。那么同时呢，这个 speaker 还是面对着这个屏幕的。那么在这种情况下呢，听众自然而然的就把他们的注意力放在了屏幕上，而不是放在了这个演讲者本人身上。我们看一下一个改进版的哈。那么这张图中呢，我们首先看一下这个屏幕呢，它是被放到了左边这个角落里面 ，OK， 它就不需要再占有那么大的空间了。那么同时呢，这个 speaker 它是面向着观众。好，当你面向观众，并且跟观众有这个 eye contact 的时候呢，那么观众跟你也会有这种互动啦。那么我们在演讲的过程当中呢，也要特别注意，要避免这样的做法。虽然说这个屏幕呢是放在了这个角落里面，但是呢，你本人也是看着这个屏幕。那么这个时候啊，这个听众就没有理由再看着你，再跟你有什么 eye contact， 而是把所有的注意力都放在屏幕上了。Okay, so much for this part. Now here, let's focus on the language. Say what you can say when interacting with visual aids. So first of all, you need to direct the audience attention to the slide that you are presenting. And you can say, I'd like us to focus our attention on. Let's move on now and look at the figures for. The next slide shows, and after that, you can explain the matrix in general terms. You can say, the figures in this table show, this chart compares. I'd like you to think about. I would like you to concentrate on this green column, as you can see, and then you can try explain the most important part. And you can do this by saying, what's interesting, what's important here is, it's important to notice that. I'd like you to think about. And lastly, you can try give the message or conclusion. And you can do this by saying, I'm sure the implications are clear to all of us. We can conclude that the lesson we can learn from this is, the significance of this is. Okay, so much for this part, and so much for the second part of the presentation. Now here, let's move on to the next part.
You can see the mobile phone use by job in this bar chart. So today, all those groups in our company have a mobile phone from the company. In fact, a total of 24% of staff have a company mobile phone. As you can see in the pie chart.
好，同样的哈，在这个部分当中呢，这个 speaker 都只是把这个 slides 幻灯片上面的最重要的信息跟听众做了交代，然后就马上 move on。好，我们再来回顾一下，在整场的 presentation 当中，这个 speaker 所用到的几张幻灯片。好，这些幻灯片呢都是比较的职业化，有 line graph、bar chart and pie chart。好，那么像这样的图表呢，能够比较直观的给出一些数据方面的信息。Now here, I'd like to introduce to you 5 tips for planning successful slides and visuals. First of all, use slides sparingly. And normally, we use only one slide in 2 minutes. And second of all, make slides pictorial. 好，使你设计的这种幻灯片呢，会比较有观赏性。And the third one, use color carefully. 那么配色方面呢，尽量不要做到撞色哈。那么同时呢，在一张幻灯片当中，尽量使你使用的颜色控制在3到4种之内。And then make visuals big enough to see. And last one, avoid unnecessary slides. Okay, so much for the 5 tips for planning successful slides and visuals. OK， 那么到目前为止呢，这个 speaker 通过展示这3个图表哈，已经把他们过去的一些做法向听众给展示清楚了。那么这个时候啊，他要回到正题上，就是他们要看一下下一步他们该怎么走。Now here, let's listen to the next part of the presentation and fill in the blanks. Ready? Here we go.
Now, we have to decide if some of those employees will need a more up-to-date piece of equipment in the future. For example, a smartphone, a palm top, or a wireless handheld device. Now, if you look at this table here...
Okay, now let's check your answers. 好，这一段当中所提到的 palm top, wireless handheld device， 在这个 speaker 做这个 presentation 的时候呢，这种手机跟 smartphone 智能手机一样，都是比较少见的。Okay, so much for this part. Now here, let me ask you this question. What kind of workers need a most up-to-date mobile phone for their job? Do you need a most up-to-date mobile in your job or the job that you plan to do? 一起来做个小练习吧。Great job and welcome back. So just now we have reviewed the evolution of the mobile phones in the past decades. And also we have listened to a speaker making a presentation about mobile phones that are outdated. Now here, let me ask you this. What do you think mobile phones will look like in the future? Great job. Now the article we're going to read about is about phones in the future. So here, let's read the article on the next page and find out, does it mention any of your ideas? Great job. Now here, the question is, does the article mention any of your ideas? Great. So here, let's focus on the language points in this article. First of all, let's take a look at this part. And in this part, I'd like you to focus on the two phrases below. In a year or two, 10 or 15 years from now. 好，我们注意一下哈，这两种表达呢，都可以用来表示将来的几年，未来的几年。 Now here, let's move on to the next part. 好，那么在这部分当中呢，作者主要是描述了这个智能手机将来还可以用来做什么。那么这里他提到了一个哈。In some countries, it's also possible to use a phone as a train ticket and office pass. 注意一下 office pass 就是我们平常所说的 something, usually a card, that employees use to get into an office. 门禁卡。好，我们再看一下最后一句话。In a decade's time, many phones will have enough memory to video all of a person's life. 那么这里的 memory 呢，指的就是space to store data in a computer, etc. Now here, let's come to the next part. 那么在这一段当中呢，作者是描述了现在很多公司正在做的一件事情。Companies are developing phones built into glasses. 很多公司呢正在探索把手机装到我们的眼镜当中去。那这个呢，一方面是能够帮助你找到方向哈。Looking for directions, a map will appear inside the glass of the lens. And maybe we will be able to use our phone to label people at a party or conference. 好，有面部识别功能。好，像这样的眼镜呢，其实现在已经开发出来哈，就是 Google Glass。它的功能呢，要比这篇文章当中所提到的这些功能呢，要多得多。我们看这个单词 lens。Lens means the glass part of a pair of glasses. 好，我们在谈到趋势的时候呢，就必然要用到一种时态，那么就是将来时。那么这个将来时的用法有哪些呢？ Let's take a look. So here below, I've presented to you some sentences from the article. Now here, I'd like you to study the examples from the article and complete the rules below. Okay, great job. Now here, let's check your answers. So we can use will or want plus infinitive without to make predictions. Like, in 20 years' time, people will use their thoughts to communicate, or we won't need phones at all. In the next one, we can use probably if we are reasonably sure about something. And we can use perhaps or maybe if we are not very sure. Okay, so much for this part. Now here, I'd like you to read the last part of the article one more time and answer the question below. Do you agree with the predictions? What new functions would you like to have on your phone in the future? 一起来做个小练习吧。Great job and welcome back. Now in today's class we talk about trends. Firstly, we reviewed the evolution of mobile phones, and then we talked about some presentation skills with visual aids. And lastly, we discussed the phone of the future. Okay guys, that's all for today. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you in the next class. Bye!